In today's video, I'm going to take you through my best macro tips, everything from focusing and lighting through to focus stacking and Photoshop retouching, all of which I use to take luxury product photos just like these. If you've watched a few of my videos before, then you'll know I do quite a lot of macro photography, and a lot of that is out and about taking photos of mushrooms or leaves or insects. But professionally, I actually do a lot of product photography, and I do all of that here at home in my studio. And the great thing about doing both macro photography and product photography is that they are both basically the same thing. They both involve small products, getting that lens right and up close on those details, controlling the lighting, and doing things like focus stacking to get sharp shots. And today is a special product shoot because I'm actually taking photos of something pretty cool. It's a new watch from Leica. And one of the great things about doing product photography, particularly of such small items, is that you don't really need a big space to do it. My entire working space in this room is only about 6 foot by 6 foot, maybe not even that. So you don't need some gigantic warehouse setup to do this. You can just do this in your bedroom or your living room at home. So I'm going to take you through everything that I'm going to do to take these photos. And let's start off with what I think is the most important part. That would be the staging. Set design in product photography is absolutely critical because it helps you create a total mood around the product. It allows you to play with colors, with shapes, with textures that all complement the colors and tones in the product that you're shooting. It's why if you look at commercial product photography used in adverts, you'll see these very elaborate stages that have been set up to absolutely make that product look its best. A hell of a lot of time and effort is put into creating the right set. And I'm going to kind of take you through some of the things that I keep in mind when I do this. Now, I'll be honest, although it is, I think, one of the most important parts of product photography, it's probably the area that I'm actually weakest at. I'm not good at building things. I'm not that good with creating things out of nothing. I'm not great with my hands, so I tend to rely on a few key things. First of all, different colors. In this case, I've actually just got some pieces of colored card from a craft shop. I've got a whole variety of different colors, and in this case, I really wanted to go with these very earthy tones. So I've got like a beigey one on the bottom and a sort of browny orange on the background. Now, when it comes to props, I've actually basically used foraged materials. I went up to a bit of beach up on the north coast of Edinburgh, where there are all kinds of old bits of masonry, these broken bits of brick and rocks and bits of slate and all kinds of different shapes and sizes. And I think they look really, really cool. They look so interesting with the way that they've been sort of smoothed out by the sea over years. So I wandered up and I was sort of trying to pick out ones that particularly caught my eye and I thought could be used in the photos. Some of the concrete blocks like this one even still have sort of bits of ironwork coming out of them, which I saw and I immediately thought, oh, I'm going to want to use that to like hang a watch off or use in some way. So I basically filled up a robust bag and brought a few kilos of them back with me. And when I'm done, I can just take them back and put them back where I found them. And it's great because it means then I get natural looking materials and it costs me absolutely nothing. So when I have all these pieces then, I end up just sort of playing around and putting them in position, maybe leaning one up against another, starting to kind of build some shapes and build some sets that might work. In all honesty, I would say that having a well-designed set is about 80% of the work. Because once you've created this amazing, imaginative scene, all you really need to do is just throw some light at it and take your picture. If it isn't a commercial shoot, I'm not being paid by Leica in any way. I have borrowed this watch and the other one just for the purposes of taking some photos so I can show the process on the channel. Okay, I've been doing a hell of a lot of chatting. I'm going to quickly talk through some of the equipment and then we're going to start setting up our scenes and taking some photos. First of all, the camera. Now, for a bit of fun, for a lot of the shots, if I can, I'm actually going to use my Leica Q343 to take the photos. And that is simply because I'm taking a photo of a Leica watch and I thought, wouldn't it be quite nice to actually take those photos on a Leica camera? Of course, with the slight hope that it might entice Leica to share those on its social media channel, and that will do no harm to me. But the Q3 is not really that great when it comes to macro, and for some of these images, I am going to want to get really close up on the details on these watches, on the hands and the tiny cogs. So when it comes to that, I am going to be going back to my Canon R5 and a 100mm macro lens. In terms of lighting then, you've probably already seen up here is a Zhiyun softbox. It's about 2 feet across, and that is sitting on the front of a Zhiyun G300 LED light, which is up here on a stand. I will be moving this around. So I am just going to be using the one light, but I will be bringing in things like reflectors and diffusion material to show how I control that light further. Other thing to note, tripod. Whichever camera I'm using, the camera will be locked down on the tripod because I'm going to either be focus stacking or I'm going to be using apertures at around f10, f12 with fairly slow shutter speeds. So to ensure sharp images, every single photo that I will be taking today will be locked down on a tripod. All right, too much talking. Let's take some photos. I think I'm finally starting to get a shot here that I actually quite like, but this is probably obvious from that lengthy time lapse. The way I work is very much about making little adjustments here and there, lots and lots of fine tuning until eventually I have something that I think is worth taking a photo of. And I can be adjusting everything from the positioning of the products, the props, the amount of props, the variation, the lighting, the camera position. Every little adjustment you make will have a huge impact on your image. So I can spend hours and hours and hours working on a single image before I actually take the photo that I'm going to use. It's not the most efficient way to work, but it is actually really quite enjoyable. It's one of the reasons I enjoy product photography as much as I do, because I can really just throw myself at all of this and try and create something really interesting. So I'm probably going to be here all night playing about with different setups, but I have found at least this shot that I think is worth walking you through. So let's take a look. So I've essentially lent this nice rock over a little bit to allow the watches to point upwards towards the light, and I've essentially just laid them on it, naturally in line with the grooves here, and just sort of placing this one on top. Now, on the other side of this, I have got lots of this tape and some other stuff to make sure that all the surfaces are protected, because of course I'm just laying glass and metal against bare rock. If I hadn't protected the backing, then I'd end up with lots of scratches, and I definitely don't want that, and I'm sure nor do Leica. So absolutely made sure to take care of the products, and of course I've given them a good clean. The other thing I've done, as I have done on one of them but not the other, is set it to 10 and 2. 10 and 2 is basically the industry standard positioning for hands on a watch, for whatever reason. I mean, in this case, it makes sense because it nicely goes either side of the Leica logo, so nothing's getting blocked. But if you look at any watch adverts, you'll probably see that 10 and 2 position with the hands. So I'll need to do the same with the other one as well. It is wound up, so as soon as I push the crown back in, the hands, of course, start moving. I've got my camera positioned pretty close up, but I am also using the crop mode to take this into about 60 millimeters, and it's allowing me to nicely fill the frame with the watches. So I've got them into a position that I like. I'm just going to adjust the time on this one back to that 10 and 2 spot. And I'm ready to take my photo. Now, I am going to be taking this at f13 ISO 100, and that is giving me a shutter speed of a second. So I'm also using the 2-second timer on the camera. Now, you probably saw in the time lapse that not only am I using the light, but I'm also using a diffuser. Now, that is incredibly important. If I take this into video mode and we just have a look straight out of camera at what that shot looks like, you can see on the watch we've got this big highlight that's literally just a direct reflection of the round softbox above. But if I bring in this diffusion material, suddenly that individual harsh circle of light becomes a lovely soft glow over both watches, and it looks amazing. Look at the difference. Without, with. It makes all the difference to create a professional look to your photos. The great thing is it's so easy to do. I mean, this is just, I think there's about a £7 diffuser from Amazon that also comes with a wraparound that turns it into a reflector. So it's such a versatile piece of equipment. I'm not putting it on a stand, I'm not doing anything fancy, I'm just holding it in place and it just absolutely transforms the image. So let's go ahead and take that photo, make sure our timer is on, yes it is, put it back to f13 for maximum depth of field. I'm manually focusing for this, and of course at f13 that's given me a really deep depth of field, so I'm not too worried about needing to focus stack this. But I'm going to bring in this diffuser and I'm going to set the camera going for 2 seconds. And there we have our shot. Got a slightly different scene all set up here. It's much more of a top-down view. I've got my Canon R5 this time with the 100mm macro lens on, and I'm basically at the closest focusing point of the lens, and that's really allowing me to fill the frame with the watch face. It's a really simple setup. I've just laid it on some really nice slate that I've got. It's got some lovely like grey tones, but also some really vibrant orange that's running through it. So I think it looks really cool. But you probably can see as well that I've moved the light. It's now very much coming in from the side, which is really catching on that nice metal edge. But I've also got my very helpful piece of white polystyrene, which is basically reflecting that light back into it. I've also just got a white box that's got some smoke alarms in it that I'm yet to install, and I've literally just propped that up as well because that again reflects the light back into it, and so instead of having a black edge to this polished watch, it's reflecting back that white and look really nice. So it's a dead easy shot. I am manually focusing, getting my focus point right on that Leica logo. I am at f11 ISO. Let's go ISO 200, and I'm going to need to be at about 1/6 of a second. Now, the other thing that I've been that I've had to do in order to control the reflections on the watch is just drape these white gloves that I use when I'm handling the watches over some of the hardware of my tripod, because my tripod has got these quite bright orange bits on it, and I noticed that they were reflecting in the watch, and I don't want to have to Photoshop them out. So if I just drape this over them, then the watch is seeing white and it's reflecting that nice white light back. So it means that I don't have to do a difficult Photoshop. You can just resolve the problem when you take the photo. So dead easy. Because of the position, I've got this light off to the side. We've got a lovely edge light curving around that watch face. I've got my focus point. I'm making sure that I've got a 2-second self timer going on here. And I can also see my hand getting in that reflection. So what I'm going to do is tap to start the countdown, move out of the way, and the camera takes the shot. I think that one looks pretty cool. It's dead simple though, so I'm not really going to play around with that one. But I think actually, instead of doing top down on this slate, I've got another idea which I've played with before and I think is going to look really cool for these watches. So instead of slate, what I've got is big tray of filthy black rocks. Disgusting. And I think this stuff is actually called shungite or shengite or something like that, and I'm pretty sure that this is stuff that you might normally have in an aquarium or a fish pond or something. It's basically some stuff that I bought in a big bag off Amazon a few years ago, also for some product photography that I was trying. But it's sort of been sitting in a sealed bag in a cupboard for a long time. But I thought putting the watch in this stuff, because it kind of looks like coal, it's very carbony, so I think it looks kind of neat. So I'm going to put this basically in exactly the same spot that this slate was, something like that, and then we can put the watch in place. Now again, on the back of this, I have lined the watch. It's covered in various layers of sellotape and also the sort of rubberized double-sided stuff that I use because the back of this watch does have a glass back, and if I'm going to be putting it on any kind of abrasive material, I want to make sure that it is completely protected, so no part of the watch is actually going to be touching this material. And I'm just going to lie this in place. And already, just from this top-down view, I can see this looks pretty cool. I'm actually going to swap the camera out. I don't think I need 100mm for this, and I think it'd be fun, wherever possible, to take these photos with my Leica rather than with my Canon. Pop my key 3 back on. I've just put an L plate on, so it's just going to allow me to get the camera into the right position by mounting it vertically. But I'm just going to make sure that the rocks are actually kind of covering the base everywhere. The base actually is just a baking tray. And then I'm just going to position the watch in a way that I think looks nice. And I think that is spot on. But what I'm also going to need to do is just adjust the lighting. Something like this, so it's really coming off from the side, pointing it down. Already, even just through the camera, on the back of the screen, I can see this looks pretty damn cool. Okay, so basically though, nothing else is changing. I've adjusted the lighting, manually focusing still. I'm going to make sure that my 2-second timer is turned on and make sure that my tripod is fully locked down in position, which right now doesn't feel like it is. There it goes. And I'm just going to move my light around. The great thing about these lights is that they're fairly cheap, these flexible softboxes. It does mean you can just grab hold of them and squash them, and as you do, it just changes how the light falls on your subject. And in this case, I'm kind of able to squeeze it a bit and create almost a bit more of a direct light falling on the watch face. So I'm going to be doing this at ISO 100, f11, and that's going to give me a shutter speed of about half a second, 0.6 seconds. So with my self timer on, I'm going to tell it to take the shot. And I think that should look pretty cool, to be honest. I've got a few hero shots of the watch now that kind of puts it in context of this scene, but now I want to get really up close on some of these finer details, including the Leica logo and the hands and the really cool inner workings on the back. So I'm switching back to my R5 with my 100mm macro for this, because as much as I do love my Leica, its macro mode really isn't up to much. And now I'm going to take off my protective bit and put that over the watch face, because I'm going to flip it over now and see if I can take some photos of these inner workings, because all of these tiny little cogs, they do move around. And there's a little bit that's sort of doing that. It's probably got a name. Horologists will know. I do not, largely because despite this video, I don't really care that much about watches. So actually what I'm doing here is basically focusing as close as I can and then sort of moving the watch around, trying to find interesting compositions within all of these cogs and wheels. And I think maybe something like this kind of works. That looks kind of neat to me. But this one is probably one that I'm going to focus stack, because we've got a lot of depth. By focusing right on the sort of top plate of cogs, we're meaning that the ones that are kind of within the body of the watch, they're maybe only half a centimeter down, 5 or 6 millimeters, but it's enough that they're falling out of focus. And I think that even at something like f11, they are not going to be as sharp as I want them to be. So if I took this shot, for example, now, and I zoom in, yeah, I can see that we've definitely lost some clarity. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my aperture down to actually f4, my ISO up to 320. That is going to let me get a much faster shutter speed of a 20th of a second, which hopefully is going to avoid any blur, because the cogs are moving very slightly. But I'm also going to turn on focus stacking. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to turn on focus stacking. I don't think I need to. This is going to be a really easy one to do manually. So I'm just going to start off by manually focusing right on the uppermost section. Take the shots. I just realized what I'm going to have to do, because these cogs are moving, they're not going to line up during the stacking process. So I'm going to have to essentially turn it off And now those cogs are going to remain static. So let's just take this same shot again, put my hand in front of a lens. Now I've bookmarked it, and I know when I look back in Lightroom where my stack begins and ends. Get my shutter speed, get my focus right on the top. Take that shot again, we adjust focus. Do another, we adjust focus. And I'm going to keep on doing this, moving that focus point further and further away, getting deeper into the heart of the watch until I've got every single shot nice and in focus. And then all I need to do is load them into Helicon Focus, which is the software I always use for my focus stacking. And then hopefully I'll be able to get a nice sharp image of all of these cogs looking amazing. So what I'm actually going to do now is just lift up the watch on this stone using just a bit of tape. See if I can focus even closer, which of course I cannot. That is far too close for my camera to manage. What about a lens cap? No, also still a bit too close, but that's probably a bit better. Lens cap, but also slightly raise it up on my tripod. And this is just allowing me to get as close as I can and try and find some more interesting compositions within all the intricate workings. And I quite like this one. But I'm going to move my lighting. Again, making sure still that it is coming in from the side, so it's allowing that light to actually cast shadows. And I think this looks really cool. I'm going to give this one a try, actually, just taking it right back up to f14. And with a shutter speed here of about half a second. See if that's going to be enough to get everything nice and sharp. I think that looks pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. Wonder if I put an extension tube on my lens, whether I can get in even closer on some of these, because these are tiny details and I'd really like to get even closer up. Let's give it a go. Because essentially extension tubes are just little things like this. There's no glass in them, but they just sit in between the lens and the camera body. And by moving that camera slightly away from the camera, by moving the lens rather, slightly further away from the camera, it actually allows you to focus even closer. Let's see if it's actually going to make any difference for us now. And actually I would say it really has. So I've really been able to fill the frame much more with these sort of pink jewel-like things on the top. So my settings now, I'm at f16, 0.6 seconds, 2-second timer. Does this look so cool though, seeing inside these things, seeing these tiny little pieces of machinery clicking away. I've gone really close up with the Leica logo on the other watch. I love that we've got these harsh green lines like wooden slats going through the frame. Definitely one for focus stacking because the top of the arm is much closer to the camera than the rest. So getting my focus point there first, tapping to take the shot. The great thing is, again, that when your camera is in place, then just means you can actually move the watch around. Well, move the stone slab around. Again, not moving the watch in case it causes any problems, but yeah, just moving the stone. So maybe this is a slightly better composition. So again, I'm going to do focusing one on the top, on the hands. Anyway, I think at that point we should take the shots that we've got over into Lightroom and over into Photoshop, and I'm going to show you how I take them from being straight out of camera snaps into hopefully commercial standard pieces of photographic art. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom, and I have taken a whole bunch of photos, but this is one of the ones that I particularly like. It's the one I did top down with the Q343. It's just a real clean image, a nice look at the watch. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the layout. I haven't really done anything to this, so I thought I'd take you through the entire process of retouching this to hopefully turn it into something that looks a little bit more commercial. I do like the layout, I like the lighting. It's certainly not perfect. I did try and get rid of those reflections. You can still see a tiny little bit of orange, and clearly there's quite a bit of dust still on the watch. And despite my efforts at trying to keep the orange bits of tripod out of the shot, you can see that there are still some there. As a bit of an example, if we have a look at the shot without those reflectors, it's very orange around here. So that is kind of the value of using those reflectors so that it's reflecting white rather than reflecting orange. This is just a little bit. We'll be able to clean that up. So I'm going to take this into Photoshop, but after I do just a little bit of work on it in Lightroom first. Now, one of the things I actually had on the camera that I didn't mention is a combined mist and polarizer filter. Now, I actually probably should have taken this off because for most of these shots, the polarizer made no difference at all. Sometimes it can help cut reflections. I actually found it didn't really make any difference. What we have got is a slight blooming of the highlights here, which I actually quite like. I think it gives the image a certain vibe, which I'm kind of into. So I've lightened it up with the exposure. I might grab the shadows, see what that's doing. It kind of helps a little bit. I have noticed that it's a bit darker in the bottom right corner. So what I could always do is just bring in a linear gradient, bring that up like this, and increase that exposure, which is now just sort of balancing it out so that it kind of fits in with the rest of them. And what I will also probably do is bring in a filter for the watch face, but I don't think I'm going to do that in Lightroom right now. I am just going to do some other quick changes. I'm going to bring the temperature down, and I'm going to bring that tint down, something like this, kind of take away that slightly magenta color cast. And then in a color mixer, I'm going to grab that green and make it a little bit more emerald because it's looking a little yellow on the watch face, and it is not a yellow watch. Also bring up the lightness, because look, if I pulse this slider up and down, it makes a huge difference to that watch face. So I'm really going to up that and increase the saturation as a result. Maybe in these yellows, there's probably quite a bit as well. There is. So I'm going to bring that yellow up in luminance, but I'm also going to get the hue and drag it over into the greens. Because right now, I don't want it to be yellow. There isn't really yellow in the watch face. It's a very, very rich emerald green. So I can adjust that by grabbing that hue. I don't want to go too far, but I do want to go quite far. So I think plus 60-ish looks pretty nice. So before and after already, just in Lightroom, we've made some good changes. I'm not going to do anything with color grading. I might do some stuff with clarity and dehaze, but if I do, I'll do that later on. I am just going to slightly sharpen it though, and by pressing and holding Option and holding the mask, you can see how much and where it's going to be applying that sharpening. Really want to bring it up. I don't need to sharpen the soft details of the rocks, but just to give a little bit more pop on the watch itself. That then is everything I want to do in Lightroom. It already looks great, so right click, edit in Photoshop, and that's where we're going to do most of the cleanup. So here we are, and first thing I'm going to do, as I always do when I'm working in Photoshop with layers, is duplicate that layer and then start working on the layer above. That way we've always got that base layer to go back to if we want to. Now, the first thing that I can see that I want to change is that although the watch is sort of fairly centered, the strap is kind of a little bit on a skew. So I want to just sort of bring everything in line, but I want to make sure that I'm doing it accurately. So by dragging in these rulers, I can bring in these lines that's going to allow me to basically line up where I want the strap to be. I'm going to do one on each side, and you can see here that this one is going up here, but it's on a very strong angle this way. And I'm just going to bring in one down here, and that's going to help me look at the Leica logo. So yeah, Leica there is in line perfectly with that line. So the watch itself is fine. I'm going to do one in the middle for the 12 and 6 position. Pretty much spot on. It might be a few pixels out, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with that. So the way I'm going to try and adjust the actual position of the strap is by using the Puppet Warp tool. So I'm going to go Edit, Puppet Warp, and this then, if I click Show Mesh, it's going to give me this big outline, and then I can start dragging things around. If you put multiple points in, you can move things all over the place, and it looks weird and bizarre, and hooray, there you go. Finished image. It's perfect. Obviously, no, it is not. So let's just go back into that, and let's do it properly so I can actually show you. I don't like having the mesh on. I don't really see any point, but I am going to firstly anchor the image, anchor the watch by putting in these points here. So now if I start moving this around, you can see that that watch is going to stay in place. And in fact, I do want to bring that around. In fact, that's almost perfect on each side. We could always, if I got rid of that one, for example, I could always try and bring it in on this side and basically sort of stretch it over. But to be honest, I think that's going to start looking a little bit messy. So instead, I'm just going to use this one point and just sort of bring it in like this. I might just slightly nudge it in up there as well. And then on the top, also just with one point, bringing it up just like that. And I think if I just apply that change, and then we turn that layer off and on, off and on, you can see the line of the holes for the strap connector is now perfectly in line with that central line, as is the bit at the top, and the actual strap itself fits nicely in those guides. So I think this looks good. I don't think there's anything more I need to do to change the positioning of the watch. So now we can kind of get on with the cleanup. Clear guides. And now we've got our nice clean base image. Let's duplicate that layer so we can work here. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do is just dust cleanup. As you could see, there is a lot of dust and these little points. And this is a process that there is no particularly easy way to do it. Using dust and scratches just smooths out details. It doesn't really do a good job. So for me, it's just about using the spot healing brush tool, decent size, and simply painting over the bits that you want to get rid of. And that really does involve zooming in to basically a pixel level and using a small brush, something like 7 pixels, and just dotting away at every single little one. It's the sort of thing that I do. I'll put maybe an episode of X-Files on or a podcast, and I will just click away as long as it takes to get rid of all of these little dots, because there are, as you can see, thousands of them. So I won't make you sit through all of this. Let's just speed through it. Some of this stuff, I actually think maybe I could use the dust and scratches tool on the bits of metal that's supposed to be glossy. So I might load it up. And so, you know, it does this, it smooths out every single little bit, which doesn't look great, as you can see. But what I can do is maybe apply this on a new layer, but then I create a mask, invert that mask, and now what I can do is paint with white and just paint in the dust and scratches layer. But the problem is it does kind of give it a bit of a matte finish, and so it's really not going to work everywhere. But it probably looks more weird simply because we are so zoomed in. So if I just zoom out, it will start to look a little less bizarre. I mean, yeah, if we turn it off and on, you can see it's got rid of all of those points of dust. Maybe it's fine. I'm going to carry on going with this and see how I feel about it later. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the cleanup now. If we zoom in, we can see that is a pretty clean watch face. If we turn both of our layers off, there it is before, And there it is now. Everything looks nice and gleaming. The only things that I haven't yet touched is the bits of sort of reflected orange in the shiny outside. So what I'm going to do is create a new layer. I'm going to merge visible. So we've now got a new layer that contains all of the underlying layers. And on top of that, adjustment and hue saturation. Now I'm just going to select the reds, bring that saturation down. It's still not quite there. Yellows, there we go. Yeah, I mean, it turns out there's quite a bit of yellow actually going on in the whole image. So that's kind of interesting to see. So what I'm actually going to do is with that mask created white is then invert that. So now it's kind of brought back, these other colors, and I can just paint in using the brush tool that white and basically paint out all the colors we don't need. And I actually really like painting out these other colors because it turns it from a sort of an orangey yellowy look into the proper silver chrome that this watch is supposed to be, which I really, really like. So it's actually going to work out really well, basically desaturating the outside of the watch, and in so doing really kind of showing the fact that it is this beautiful silvered chrome finish. It looks a little weird right now, but we'll get there. And then we need to do the same again, of course, on these small parts within the watch. And of course, the hands as well, which are also reflecting that warm light. And I don't want them to. I want it to be silvery chrome. And then lastly, I'm just going to get a real big brush size and just brush it over everything else in the scene, because you know what? I don't want a yellow cast on the stones either. I want it to be very cool tones, if not kind of even blue sort of tones. Basically just leaving the only colors in the scene should be the green of the watch face and that little pop of red, that little Leica red on the right. And that's exactly what we're getting. I think it looks cool. If I turn it off and on, that's actually a real nice touch to kind of help get towards that very sort of professional finish that we're going for here. So I'm just going to merge that down, duplicate that layer, and then open up the camera raw filter. And that's going to bring up the exact same settings that we would otherwise have in Lightroom. So it's a really good way of working. I'm actually going to kind of bring the shadows down. I think that looks a little bit better. But really what I'm in here for, oh, that's a bit much. Let's say zoom in to 50, nope. Zoom in to 25%. That's a bit better. I'm going to bring in a radial gradient filter, and I'm just going to fill the watch face just like this, with no feather because I want it to be perfectly in line. So let's just give a little pulse of white. What does that do? Looks nice. Maybe a bit more contrast. But really, this is the point when I'm going to use a bit of dehaze just to try and give a little bit more bold pop to that green. So plus 20. And what about a little bit of clarity? A little works. Too much, it starts going crunchy and odd. So I really want to keep this at around plus 10 is enough. I think it gives a nice look to the watch. And I might actually just sort of slightly bring that tint towards the green and also cool it down a bit. Yeah, again, it's looking good. And let's go back down to here and maybe a little bit of, what about texture? Because there is some lovely texture. Yeah, again, a little bit, plus 10. And I also am going to increase the sharpness. So that is looking, I think, already quite a bit better. If we turn it off, it looks a little bit flat. Turn it on, lovely, lovely details. And again, into our color tabs now, our color mixer. So if there's any yellows left, there is a little bit. This is the point we grab them, drag them into the greens. The greens themselves, I think, could stand to be a bit more emeraldy, plus 14. Saturation up just a bit. Also saturation up of that red and the luminance, because I want that little red dot to really, really pop. I don't want it to be hidden in there. I want it to really come out. Oh, it's looking really cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, let's zoom back out. Oof, Yes, right. Okay, let's then add another radial gradient, extruding out from the watch face. I'm going to do this. We're going to increase the feather by a lot, something like this. And then we're going to right click on that mask and invert it. So now it's only affecting the edges of the scene. So now I can grab the shadows, bring those down. Actually, you know what? Shadows aren't really doing a lot. The exposure then. Basically just creating a vignette around the edge. It's going to draw the eye to the watch in the middle. And I think that might be enough. Turn it off and on. Yeah, just slightly darkening those sides helps draw the eye to the watch in the middle of the frame. There we are. I think that's looking really, really good. I don't think there's much more I would want to do to this image. So let's just turn off everything except our base layer. So this is what we brought in. The tones a little bit yellow and dirty, and we've got reflections. I can't use the brush tool. Want to zoom in. I'm trying to use the brush tool. I'm trying to zoom in Photoshop. There we go. We've got these weird reflections, and the watch strap is very skew with. It's going off at this weird angle. We fixed all of that. We brought it in. We've given it this lovely tone. We haven't added a look, as it were. I'm trying to keep the watch looking as natural as possible, because at the end of the day, it is a product, and I'm trying to show the product as it really is, so that people know what they're buying if they were looking at this, say, as an advert in a magazine. And yeah, I am pretty pleased with how this looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just save a copy and pop it in my pictures. I'm going to save it as a TIFF, because then I'm going to bring it back into Lightroom. So let's do that. And maybe we could just give it a final couple of tweaks. Maybe just slightly bringing those whites up again, just to help that clarity. Maybe bring the shadows down a tiny amount. Is the watch face centered? It really is. It is absolutely, couldn't be more central. If I'm honest, the top of the strap definitely could do with a little bit more adjustment. I didn't get that quite spot on. This is a rush edit. I'm so far recording for not that long. If I was doing this commercially, I would spend hours and hours over this one image, making sure that everything is absolutely spot on. This is just an example. You've seen how I would use a puppet warp tool. I would just do a better job. In this instance, let's actually maybe give it a 4:5 crop. So if it doesn't matter anyway, because I'm kind of cropping out that top bit. Maybe just sort of nudge it up so that the actual watch is absolutely in the middle of the frame. And I think that's looking really, really nice. I actually do like that we've got that slight highlight bloom from the mist filter. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased. I'm pretty pleased with that. Maybe just up the vibrance. Just give it that little bit more pop. That's it. The cherry on the top. Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I would go about creating this type of commercial product photo. Now, I know that a lot of you aren't necessarily into product photography, but I do know that a huge amount of you are really keen on macro photography. And I hope that it is obvious that so many of the macro photography skills that I've shown you over the years can be completely applied to this type of photography. So it's definitely a great one that if maybe you are wanting to get your macro lens out and have a bit of an experiment, but you don't really want to go out, or you haven't got the time to go exploring in the woods, you can turn that lens to products in your house. Maybe you've got a great watch of your own, or a camera or something else, and you can put those same skills to use taking photos like this. Because while the subject matter might be different, the macro skills are absolutely identical. And for me, I think it is why I enjoy doing macro and product photography so much, because it is leaning on those same skills. Anyway, that does bring me to an end. If you have enjoyed this video, then do please give it a thumbs up. And of course, consider subscribing to my channel if you don't already. And I will see you next time.